Hello, Tim Shepherd with ABC News. The Victorian government says the state will start to ease restrictions again in about a week, but the strict lockdown measures won't be lifted until next month. Phil Johnson has the latest.
Victorian authorities have released the roadmap out of the state's sixth lockdown. They say cases will peak at about 4,500 in mid-December, hospital admissions will hit more than 3,100 by the end of that month, and COVID deaths will peak in January at around 2,200. In about a week, Melburnians will be able to go outside and catch up with friends, and final year students can return to on-site learning. Around the 26th of October, lockdown will end, and the reasons to leave your home and the curfew will be lifted. Also then, hospitality and entertainment venues will be open to 250 fully vaccinated people outdoors. Weddings and funerals will also be open for 50 fully vaccinated people outdoors, and all school students will return to on-site learning for at least part of that learning week.
COVID restrictions in 12 local government areas of concern will ease from midnight to align with the rest of Greater Sydney. The time limit on outdoor exercise has been removed. Up to 5 fully vaccinated people will be able to gather outdoors, and they'll be allowed to attend small weddings as well. The Premier also announced that all outdoor public pools will reopen across the state from Monday the 27th. The Canterbury Bankstown Mayor, Carl Asfor, hopes the restrictions will remain fair when the state reaches the 70% double-dose target.
But we just want fairness and equality. We want to be treated like the rest of Sydney, and I really do hope that when we do open up at 70% and 80%, the Premier does open up the harshest lockdown areas, the 12 areas of concern, at the same time as everybody else.
New South Wales reported 1,083 new COVID cases today. The ACT recorded 17 new local infections, with most of them out in the community while infectious. 8 people are in hospital with the virus and 2 patients are in intensive care. Health Minister Rachel Stephen-Smith says appointments will open tomorrow for 12 to 15-year-olds at mass vaccination clinics.
There are about 25,000 young people in this age group in the ACT. And so while this is a relatively small cohort, we know it is particularly important that we continue our vaccination program to ensure that young people in our community can be vaccinated.
A law firm has issued 2 more lawsuits against the Tasmanian Health Service, alleging it failed to stop a paediatric nurse from abusing 2 young patients at the Launceston General Hospital. More from Liz Gwynn.
James Jeffrey Griffin took his own life when he was charged with child sex offences in 2019. Last week, law firm Thomas Arnold and Becker issued 2 actions on behalf of children aged 12 and 13. And this week, another 2 former patients have come forward to sue the THS for failing to investigate the numerous complaints against Griffin. In one instance, it's alleged Griffin gave a 17-year-old girl pain medication to sedate her before sexually assaulting her. The other is in relation to alleged predatory conduct towards a 14-year-old girl.
Overseas, and the French Foreign Minister has strongly condemned a new military alliance between Australia, the US and the UK, which led to the tearing up of a $90 billion submarine contract between France and Australia. The BBC's Hugh Schofield reports.
Jean-Yves Le Drian said that the decision to recall France's ambassadors was taken because there was now a serious crisis between us. The revoking of the Australian contract to buy French submarines had been the result of lying, duplicity, a major breach of trust and contempt towards France, he said. Asked why France had not recalled its ambassador in London, unlike the other 2, Jean-Yves Le Drian said that Paris wanted to hear the explanations from Washington and Canberra. But with London, he said, we know their permanent opportunism. The British, he said, using a French expression, were like the 5th wheel on the carriage in the new pact. In other words, inessential extras.
Authorities in the US are searching a large wildlife reserve for the partner of Gabby Petito, a young woman who went missing while on a road trip across America. The case made international headlines this week after Gabby's 23-year-old fiancé, Brian Laundrie, returned home from the trip without her and refused to cooperate with police. Brian has since disappeared himself, prompting police and the FBI to search a 24,000-acre reserve in Florida, where his family believe he is. And in sport, cricket authorities in New Zealand say a warning about a specific credible threat against the national team was behind the abrupt decision to cancel the tour of Pakistan. New Zealand Cricket's chief executive says officials took the only possible responsible course of action under the circumstances. You're up to date with the latest from ABC News.
On the stance, big shout for leg before, and she's given.
Women's international cricket.
They come for a second, throw on its way, shoot right out.
Australia versus India starts September 21.
G'day, Australia.
We're here to share some vax facts.
If you get vaccinated, you're less likely to get COVID-19.
But they also reduce your chances of passing the virus on to others. We all have to get vaccinated. The vast majority of us.
I'm looking forward to making people laugh in person.
I'm looking forward to going dancing.
I'm just really looking forward to never having to watch the daily press conferences again.
When it's available to you, please get yours.
Nice bit of shepherding by Freem Bartlett.
Goal.
It's a goal. No. Yes, it is. Boots in towards goal. He's got Hudson. Centering kick for Brownless. Sets himself. Ablett's marked it. You watch the fight, Doug. I'll watch the footy. Look it. Left foot. Goal. Look at that big pack of players. Great mark to Royce Hart.
Crumpton picks up the ball, slams it goal, and puts it through.
Sheldon picks it up. Runs it on over goal. Who's there? Schimmelbusch and Bremner. In comes Egan Knight. Takes the magnificent mark right over the top.
On ABC Radio and ABC Grandstand Digital.
Oh, there's the siren.
This is Vintage Grandstand.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Vintage Grandstand. Demons fans, settle in. We have a magnificent 1964 vintage for you to enjoy. 57 years to the day. It's Melbourne's last grand final victory, a thrilling clash with fierce rival Collingwood, decided by a margin of just 4 points. In the next hour, you'll hear from champion players from that fabled Demon side, as well as original match commentary from the ABC archives. I'm Alistair Nicholson. Along for the ride today is Matt Clinch. G'day, Clinchy.
Hello, Al, and good afternoon to our listeners. It's a lovely look back at history, isn't it? All games, of course, were played on Saturday with the 12 VFL teams, except for when Melbourne played Collingwood on the Queen's birthday holiday. And the players all had jobs. The Melbourne players included salesmen, clerks, teachers, plumbers, architects, farmers and doctors. It's a long way from the professional nature of the game in which we see today. And Melbourne were competing in their 11th consecutive finals run, fighting for a 6th premiership. It was a glory days for the Demons fans under Norm Smith.
And Bob Rose was the coach of the Collingwood Football Club, his first year at the helm, having replaced the two-time premiership winning coach Fonz Kine. Mark McClure, a three-time premiership player with the Carlton Football Club, is with us. G'day, sellers.
How are you, boys? And to the listeners, Melbourne were a star team in that period of time. They continue to run and win grand finals at ease. They had the absolute coach of the century almost, the Norm Smith, who they named a medal after. And I wonder if someone could tell us who would the Norm Smith medalist be in this game.
Yes, well, we'll be speaking to the champions from the game in the next hour. And if you've got a memory from the day as well, 0437 774 774. Well, Brian Dixon would play in 5 premierships with the Melbourne Football Club during his 252-game career from 1954 to 1968. He is a member of Melbourne's Team of the Century and the AFL Football Hall of Fame, and he joins us now on Vintage Grandstand. G'day, Brian. Welcome.
G'day, gentlemen.
It's lovely to have you with us, Brian. Think back to that famous day in 1964. What immediately comes into your mind when you think back to that grand final?
I think Froggy Crumpton's kick, which resulted in a goal and resulted in us going from behind to in front. And in the end, it enabled us to win the premiership.
You had won the second semi-final against Collingwood by a margin of 89 points, and Johnny Townsend, who kicked 5 goals in that second semi-final, also kicked 3 in the grand final. Had you expected that this match might be a little easier than it turned out to be?
Not really. I mean, whenever you're getting ready to play in a grand final, you've got to expect the very worst, and you hope for the very best.
And how tense did it get late in the game?
Oh, it was unbelievably tense. No one quite expected the way in which the game opened up, with Collingwood matching Melbourne more or less at every stride.
It was certainly a wonderful game, and inaccuracy played its part in the final quarter as well. Melbourne with just the 1-goal 6, and Collingwood managed to kick 3 goals 1. Was there a sense of frustration creeping in late that you weren't taking your opportunities?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, all that you're interested in when you're playing is to try and keep your nose in front. and to contribute as much as you can to that purpose.
Brian, it's Matt Clinch here, of course, the legendary Norm Smith. He's given credit for winning the premiership with this side because it wasn't a star-filled lineup for Melbourne. You were one of the few who did argue with Norm. How did that go for you?
Well, I spent most of my playing life under Norm Smith, and he was an absolutely great coach, and his contribution to Melbourne is underestimated. It was fantastic.
Well, in the next year, after 12 games, he was sacked.
Well, wasn't on the committee. I don't know what deliberations entered into the minds of the committee, but from a point of view of what Norm Smith achieved, it was an extraordinary decision.
Incredible, and it changed the fortunes. It changed the whole fortune of that football club.
Yeah.
Because not since then have you won one. And Barras goes on and coaches, and there's a lot of coaches come out of both of those two teams who've led the AFL and VFL area. So to me, that was extraordinary. Won 9 of 12 and was pushed away.
Well, it was extraordinary, and I mean, you'd have to look at the politics of the individual persons involved, and a lot can be taken from what you might assume of that situation.
Brian, obviously that was Melbourne's last premiership. You were part of the resistance when they were looking to merge with the Hawks, so we may never have seen a Melbourne premiership again if it wasn't for the likes of you and the crew that led the merger against Hawthorn.
I think that's a long straw to draw. Obviously, we would have bettered, I suppose, had we merged with Hawthorn, but that wasn't the only thing that was under examination when those decisions were made.
I think Don Scott helped you. He refused to go to Melbourne, didn't he?
Yeah, well, I think Don Scott certainly was not in favour.
Brian Dixon's with us, Melbourne Team of the Century member and also Australian Football Hall of Fame member, played in 5 premierships with Melbourne in 56, 57, 59, 60 and 64. 1954, Brian, was your first grand final when the Western Bulldogs, or Footscray as they were then known, claimed their first ever premiership. And 55, you would have played if not for a famous incident in that Melbourne premiership. Can you tell us what happened?
Oh, well, I was captain coach of commerce faculty at Melbourne University in the university premiership. And we were playing, I think it was dentistry we were playing. And I turned up because I'd been told really not to play. And I turned up at the university without my football gear. And I lived at Nunawading. And I didn't have a car, and I thought it's impossible for me to play because I won't have any gear. But a fellow called Rex Thompson had a car, a Buick, and he said, Dicko, we need you to play. And otherwise, Mick Arlett, I think it was dentistry we played in the grand final. And anyway, they persuaded me that I should play for the sake of all of the blokes. And I played. And we won the premiership for commerce. And the next day, I was told by Norman Smith that I'd disobeyed the rules at Melbourne and I was not going to be selected. And that's what happened.
So this was the week of the 1955 grand final that you played in that match.
Was it a midweek
game? When I
game?
didn't play, I got left out.
Yeah, that you played in the other match.
I played in the commerce faculty match.
Hey, Brian, was that a midweek comp? Midweek?
Yeah, Wednesday.
A Wednesday, yeah.
It was a Wednesday, yep.
Incredible. Who would have you given the Norm Smith medal to in this game?
I beg your pardon?
Who would have you given the Norm Smith medal to in this game?
In the 55 game?
In 64. Who did you think was best on ground?
The 64 game?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know the answer to
that. You can mention yourself if you like.
Oh, well, I certainly had a good game, so it was a great thrill to be so much involved with the premiership.
So the best players as listed on the day, you were listed as the second best player for Melbourne, Brian, and Frank Adams was listed as the best player for Melbourne. In 55, when you didn't play in that grand final, there was a very famous incident involving Frank Adams and Des Healy, wasn't there? Do you remember seeing that? Were you at the ground watching on when that collision took place?
I was, and I don't completely remember the collision, but I know, Frank Adams was a very, very good friend of mine, and we saw each other socially a lot, and often had dinner together with his beautiful wife Noel and my wife Marie at the time, and we were very close. But so I was really pleased for Bluey to do what he did, but I was very sorry to see the incident that occurred.
And he was knocked out for 45 minutes, the report I was reading said. Do you remember him being out and unconscious?
I remember him lying on the ground, yep, absolutely.
Frightening stuff.
It was frightening, yep.
And what do you think made Melbourne such a strong side during that period? Under Norm Smith during that period, Melbourne won 6 flags from 1955 to 1964. What do you think was the key to the success of the club?
Well, I think there's absolutely no doubt that Norm Smith was the architect for the whole thing. But he was all well supported by the committee, particularly Jim Cardwell, the secretary. Jim played a wonderful part in recruiting people from the country and from the metropolitan area, and I think that he and Norm Smith had a wonderful relationship, and the two of them worked together, and they really carried the team forward to success.
Brian, does it make you proud to watch the side today, the way how they're playing? And
absolutely. I'm looking forward to the premiership, and hopefully Melbourne will be successful.
We think so too. We all hope so, and we think it's going to be a great thing. But they are different to how they have been playing over the last sort of 40 or 50 years when you think about it.
Well, I don't know that I accumulate the 40 or 50 years, but anyway, I guess from a historical point of view, you're absolutely correct in what you say. But anyway, let's hope that the Demons reverse that trend and win the premiership.
Brian, it's a real treat to speak to you on Vintage Grandstand today. I know a lot of our listeners love hearing your voice on the radio. I've had a text come in from Rob at Murchison, says, thank Brian Dixon for all he did for sport, recreation and physical education as a state politician. And we thank you too for coming on and sharing your memories of that famous victory in 1964. And we're going to take our listeners to some of the audio very shortly. So,
yeah, well, it's certainly one of the fondest memories of my life. And it was just... in fact, belonging to the Melbourne Football Club and then going through with all of the fellows and the committee and everybody, it was just a wonderful pleasure.
And it's a pleasure speaking
well
to
done.
you. Brian Dixon, thanks for your time today.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
That's Brian Dixon, champion of the Melbourne Football Club, 5 premierships, 252 games in the Australian Football Hall of Fame and also in the Melbourne Team of the Century. Tony on the text says, 15 minutes in and I'm already loving the retro of the 64 grand final. Going to be a privilege to listen to. Thanks, Tony. Good to have you with us. Peter sends us a text saying, good afternoon from Peter in Lena Valley. 57 years ago at this time, my elder and late brother Alan were desperate and I were desperate to hear a broadcast of the Granny. So we were at the top of Mount Wellington, tuned into 3LO. Thanks for the great memories the broadcast will bring to me, says Peter. Real pleasure, Peter. Hope you enjoy it. Let's take you to some of the broadcast action from the day. The commentators are Noel Bailey and Ken Dakin. And this is how it unfolded as was broadcast that evening after the grand final on ABC television.
Good evening, and a particular welcome to those of you listening to this program in other states. Well, it was a wonderful battle this afternoon at the MCG before a crowd of 102,469 people. Melbourne becoming premiers of the Victorian Football League for 1964, defeating Collingwood by 4 points. Melbourne 8 goals, 16 behinds, 64 points, to Collingwood 8 goals, 12 behinds, 60 points. Well, the Demons took the field as pretty clear favourites over the Magpies, but Magpie tradition proved that no one can afford to be favoured against Collingwood. It was a stirring battle, but each time Melbourne took the lead, the Magpies fought back to close the gap.
Chapman, the Collingwood wingman, is about to take the kick, and Chapman will take it on the half-forward flank. He's a fair way out. Chapman I think possibly not within scoring distance. He comes in from the half-forward line. He's out about 55 yards from goal. There's the kick. It's a good one from Chapman. Right up towards the behind post. The big fellas fly, and Tassie Johnson gets up high. But there in front of him was Waters, and I think that Waters brings down the mark for Collingwood in the forward pocket. A beautiful mark. Johnson had the spring on Waters that time, but Waters in front was able to bring it down quite safely. He's having quite a lot of trouble. Waters with all the streamers lying on the ground, very close to the boundary line. Acute angle, 15 yards out, drives at goal. It's a good shot, though, and it's through. First goal of the match. A goal to Collingwood, kicked by Waters, and Collingwood 1 goal now behind 6 points. Melbourne yet to score in the first couple of minutes of play of this Victorian Football League Grand Final. Back to you, Ken.
Well, this game opening up in much the same pattern as did the second semi-final between Melbourne and Collingwood. Collingwood on top early, had about 2 goals on the board before Melbourne settled down, but Melbourne went on to win by 89 points. Back on the centre, Henderson comes in as tackle, doesn't get a free kick. Davis comes in, picks up the ball for Melbourne. Drives it out onto their right half forward flank where Keneally goes to the ball there with Hill. Neither of them can hold it in. Chips has a man for Melbourne very cleverly. Gets hold of the ball, sends it up towards Burke. Burke is brushed aside though. Out comes Steer. Steer is bumped solidly by Lord, the big fellow for Melbourne as he comes through. Is spilt on the turf, but Lord couldn't handle the ball cleanly after getting to it and takes it over the line to be thrown in about 25 yards round for the Melbourne goal. In the right forward pocket, here's the ball into play. Immediately, Big Gablick gets the tap. He was in front of Lord then. Obviously, Lord has been given the job of taking over the ruck work for Melbourne when that ball is in the scoring zone. He comes now with Gablick. Gablick gets the tap, but it's sharked by Melbourne. In the meantime, Big John Lord was interfered with, and he'll get the free kick for Melbourne. Very popular with the Melbourne supporters is John Lord, who came back into the Melbourne side in the second semi-final. Kicked, I think, about 4 goals. There's his shot now at the goal. It's falling a little bit short. They fly for it off the hands of the pack and out of play to be thrown in about 2 or 3 yards around from the right-hand behind post. Collingwood first to score. 1 goal on the board. Melbourne yet to score. Ball into play. Here's Townsend, who was brilliant in the second semi-final, getting hold of the ball, shooting for goal and putting it through.
Today's VFL Grand Final between Melbourne and Collingwood, your commentators Ken Dakin and Noel Bailey. The remainder of the first quarter consisted of fast, even and thrilling football, with the scores remaining close. At a quarter time, Melbourne led by a point, 2 goals 6-18 to 2-5-17. The second quarter was of the same pattern. Collingwood, however, made several changes up front. Graham to centre half forward, Waters to full forward, and then Steer to full forward and Waters onto the ball. The Magpies were trying to niggle their opponents, but umpire Brophy appeared happy to let things go. However, it was the Magpies in front at half-time, leading Melbourne 5 goals 9-39 to 5-7-37. And now we pick up play in the third quarter. 11 minutes of play have gone, and the scores: Melbourne 6-9-45, Collingwood 5-9-39.
And the Collingwood fullback Potter putting it into play, bidding it out towards the half-back flank. Henderson flies for the mark. The ball comes behind this time. Knocked on further by Collingwood towards the centre wing position. Leading in the race for the ball, though. Melbourne get hold of it. Ball is picked up for them by Davis. He puts his boot to it and swings it out of play over between the centre wing and Melbourne's half-forward flank. Melbourne a goal in front. 6-9-45 to Collingwood 5-9-39. Applause for Norman as he comes off the field for Collingwood, and he's been replaced, as we've Ken Dakin already told you, by Urquhart. The ball into the air now, up on the centre wing position on the outer side. Collingwood get hold of it, left footed down towards the half-forward flank position. Players tangle over there. There's an opportunity for Dalton to pick it up. The ball is knocked away from him, though. Melbourne chip in through Rowett, kick it across towards the centre wing, and there the ball has gone out of play. Out of play over on the outer wing. Wise rucking for Melbourne. Going in there was Gavlich at Collingwood, getting in front this time. The big fellow, the ball comes onto the ground again. There's a pack of players around the ball. Nobody can break clear, and umpire Brophy is running up into this pack of players, and he's going to bounce the ball. Between the centre wing and Collingwood's half-forward flank on the other side. And the ruck this time, and Melbourne get it again. Wise rucking well, gets the hit down. It goes across in the direction of Williams. He gets his boot to the ball for Melbourne, kicking it across towards the half-forward flank position. Players coming downfield, unable to control the ball, though. Collingwood have got the opportunity over on the half-back line, get a hand pass into the centre wing position, drive it down towards the half-forward flank. They've got the opportunity again. Henderson's got it. He tries a hand pass. It comes into the open spaces. Anderson comes across the field for Melbourne, picks the ball up, though, in defence, kicking it across towards the centre wing position, looking that time for Adams. The woman getting a good bit of handball, get the ball across to Barassi on the half-forward line. and he hits a magnificent pass. A beauty to Lord. Going past, Lord tries to knock it back to Barassi. Barassi knocks it further on into the forward flanker position. Collingwood defenders under pressure, but they're able to break away in the back line now, and the ball is kicked across and out of play. A brilliant exchange there by Melbourne, and a beautiful pass from Barassi to Lord, and perhaps the handball a little bit overdone towards the finish, but that was a beautiful pass to Lord, and he had to dive for it and really scooped it up off the ground just inside the boundary line. On out of bounds now on the half-forward flank for Melbourne, with Melbourne 6-9 to Collingwood 5-9.
Melbourne have been attacking most of the time in this third quarter. There's Lord getting a tap, and he's going to be penalised, I think, for throwing the ball. He grabbed it and then threw it down towards Townsend, and the free will go to Collingwood. Taken out there by Kevin Rose, is it, or Waters? Waters it is to take the free. Waters taking the free kick, and Melbourne's right full forward position comes in. There's his drop kick, a nice one onto the far side of the ground. The wind gets hold of it, though, and takes it out of play to be thrown in. Not much in this game. Melbourne leading by one clear goal, 6-9 to 5-9. We've had almost 13 minutes of play in this third quarter. Tap this time goes to Collingwood, comes out towards Rover there, but he couldn't get hold of it. Wise picks up the ball, drives it to Burke. Burke tries to mark the ball. He couldn't hold it. Onto the ground it comes. In come Collingwood through McLean in defence, picking up the ball nicely, booting it defensively out of play, where it'll be thrown in on Melbourne's right half forward flank. Melbourne, I think, making the mistake in this quarter of attacking through the wrong wing. They've been bottled up by Collingwood in that non-scoring wing, the wind going right across the ground. The obvious attacking move is through the grandstand flank. Here's the ball coming in now. Gablick getting in front of Lord, gets the tap, down it comes, picked up by Dalton. In the meantime, Lord is out on his back. I don't know what happened. I think Master Gablick was on the scene, but Lord looking pretty sick there. As players come round him, didn't see it because the ball had gone away, and just what happened I don't know. But John Lord in the hands of the trainers, players milling around him there, and we'll see what's going to happen. Lord moving away from the pack, flanked by Collingwood players, Melbourne players, trainers, and the free kick is going to John Lord. It'll be against Gablick. Umpire Brophy trying to get a couple of Collingwood players off the mark as Lord goes back. Barassi moves in short, but Lord's going to have a long shot at goal. But I think any shot the ball will be... apparently Duncan Wright, is it, who was on the mark, or McLean must have said something to umpire Brophy, and he's been paid the penalty and brought back 15 yards, giving Lord a better chance. But Lord is kicking into the wind. It may be held up by it. We'll wait and see. There's his shot at goal. It's a wobbly old punt marked by Collingwood. No, Gablick comes out with the ball as it hits the ground. Clears it away nicely for Collingwood out towards Ricky Watt and Dixon. Dixon gets hold of it for Melbourne. Keeps it nicely in play as he drives it forward. Wise flew high, couldn't hold it. The temper's frayed now. They're coming in from all directions and been felled right, left and centre. Collingwood paying the penalty. And a free kick will go to Melbourne. Jacobs to take it at centre half forward. Back he goes, a nice kick right up in front of goal. They fly for the ball there. It hits the ground. Out comes Reeves with it nicely for Collingwood. Clears the ball away. It's coming out again towards Melbourne though, and Vagg takes the mark here. Now Collingwood are paying far too much attention to the Melbourne players at the moment. Probably trying to rough them up. It could be good tactics. Here's the kick now by Vagg. Up in front of goal it goes. Melbourne, however, can't break away with the ball there. Reeves comes clear again. Sends it across onto the opposite flank where Adams moves to it with Chapman, but they can't get to it before it goes over the line to be thrown in half forward right. Melbourne in the attack. Melbourne 6-9, Collingwood 5-9.
In the ruck this time. Not too many ruckmen over there either at the moment as the ball travelled very quickly from one side or the other. Collingwood get hold of the ball from the pack, kick it across into the centre, and Crompton coming right down following the Collingwood rover into the centre of the ground, takes the mark almost in the centre. The kick from Crompton coming down towards the centre half forward position. Vagg flies together with the ball comes to the ground, picked up by Barassi. Barassi lines the goals up and is well off the target, off the side of the boot and out of play. You can hear the crowd in the outer roar. Barassi having a bad day today. He hasn't done too many things right at all.
Vintage Grandstand on ABC Radio and ABC Grandstand Digital.
Commentary from the ABC, original match commentary from the 1964 grand final between Melbourne and Collingwood. The commentators are Noel Bailey and Ken Dakin, Alistair Nicholson, Matt Clinch and Mark McClure taking you through it. Vintage grandstand for you on Grandstand AFL. We heard the commentary there of Noel Bailey suggesting Barassi wasn't having a great day, but suggestions that the Collingwood players were roughing up the Melbourne players as well. And very late there, we heard Barry Vagg take a mark for the D's, and he now joins us on the line as well on Vintage Grandstand. Barry, thanks for your time today. How are you?
Good, thank you very much.
It's terrific to have you with us. Do you concur with the commentary team there that Collingwood were roughhousing a little bit?
Oh, I don't recall that they were overly manhandling us at all. No, it was not much different to a normal game.
What were those games like in those days?
Oh, well, very competitive, of course, and the finals were a different game altogether to the home and away series and the semi-finals for that matter, and the crowd noise was astounding, really overwhelming in a way, but the actual game wasn't terribly that much different. A bit more pressure, I suppose, but anyway, we got through it.
Absolutely. 102,469 people there, so a crowd of over 100,000 for that grand final, and many of them spilling onto the ground with streamers and whatnot. What was that like, having them so close?
Well, it's a little unusual, you know, if you got near the boundary, of course, you had to be wary of your footing, but, I'd never seen that before, as a matter of fact, but that didn't have a marked effect on our mental approach to the game, not at all.
Barry, where did you play your junior football before you went to Melbourne?
I played junior football in Shepparton.
In Shep, yeah, I thought
played
you did.
in the under 13s, under 15s, under 17s, and for Shepparton itself.
Was Tommy Hafey one of your coaches at Shepparton?
Yes, Ron Page was the first coach from South Melbourne, and then Tom took over from Ron.
So what was the difference?
I played under Tom for a couple of years.
So what was the difference between Norm Smith and Tommy?
Well, Norm was very caustic with some of his comments. Tommy was more affable, and he let the players do a lot of things by themselves without them coaching him too much. But he was very strict disciplinarian, Tommy. You know, he wanted you to do the right thing by him and by the team. But he was a good. You played for Tommy really more so than anything else. Whereas with Norm, you were playing for Melbourne. It wasn't so much an individual thing.
And the story goes with Norm Smith that he told Bernie Macy that if he didn't sort out his long hair and his beard, he mightn't get a game in 64. Was that true?
Yes, I heard that too. And Bernie had a bit of a growth going there, but he soon got it off.
So your footy journey, you were recruited originally to Footscray in 1960, but you couldn't get a game with them, and then you had to get a permit to leave Footscray to join Melbourne?
Well, yes, I did. I signed up with Footscray when I was 16 years old, and then Shepparton said to me, you know, well, what did you do that for? That was a bit stupid, and they wouldn't give me a clearance to come down and play. I got picked to play for Footscray in an early game one year, and but they didn't allow me a permit, so I just went back and played for Shepparton.
Barry, in those times, you were getting paid more money in the country than you were to come to town, wasn't it?
Oh, I don't know what they got in town at the time, but when I got to Melbourne, of course, I was getting more money than I got in Shepparton.
Well, so you should.
And that wasn't much anyway.
Can you remember roughly what you were getting paid back then, Barry?
Well, I got paid nothing in Shepparton.
No wonder you got more.
For a team that made a grand final and won a premiership, was there anything incentive-wise there?
Paper bags?
Say that again, getting paid for playing in the grand final.
Yeah, would you get any additional money if you won a premiership or anything?
Well, I don't know. In Shepparton, we didn't win a grand final when I was there.
No, I'm talking about Melbourne, in town.
But Melbourne, yes, we did. We got extra money for winning a grand final. I think it worked out at about £96 each, something to that effect. But that was over and above a normal game payment, which was around £20 a match.
There's a lot of money in those days.
Yeah, so what, £96, around $200 maybe if you were to put it into today's terms.
Yeah, that's about correct.
Barry Vagg's with us, part of the 1964 Melbourne Premiership winning team. Barry, we were talking earlier, Matt mentioned that so many players of that era, well, everyone really was working and playing football on the side. What were you doing, and what are some of the more interesting jobs you can remember that your teammates were doing at the time?
Well, firstly, myself, I worked as a trainee accountant in the city, so I had to get a tram down from Collins Street down... Collins Street, no, it was...
Flinders Lane, Street.
Flinders Street,
Yep.
Flinders Street. Tram from Flinders Street down to the MCG and walk some of the way, but that was how most of the players probably would have got to the ground. A lot of them had cars, of course, and worked out of town. A couple of the boys, Graham Jacobs and Kenny Emsell and John Townsend, they were school teachers. Asa worked in the mobile oil.
He did.
Brian Dixon was a parliamentarian, and Bluey was in sales position, Bluey Adams. So Bernie Massey was a plumber. Tassie was in sales. So Dr. Rowett, what was he doing? He was a doctor, of course.
Maybe.
And what about back then, Barry, in terms of training? Because you would have trained at the MCG on a Tuesday or Thursday after work, so the opportunity to train, of course, where the grand final would be held?
Yeah, that's right. It was a pleasure to train at the MCG, and we didn't realise how lucky we were to be able to just run out there and have a kick around on a Tuesday night. Tuesday night's training was more strenuous than Thursday night. We only trained for about 40 minutes on a Thursday night, but Tuesday was probably an hour and a half to 2 hours, pretty strenuous. But we only did the two days a week or two sessions a week. We didn't really have a run on a Sunday morning even in those days.
Well, you missed out on the Sunday morning having a couple of beers after the game, wouldn't you?
Well, not at the ground. But
Hey, Barry, where do we find you now?
I live in Eubank,
okay.
Suburban Melbourne,
Great.
Which is out near Heidelberg or Greensborough.
So do you get to the footy much?
I don't, personally, no. I don't go to the football much. My wife's very keen on watching the football, but I'm not that mad to sit and watch another game. I like watching replays on the television, but and I'm pleased to see Melbourne doing well this year.
Yeah. They've been very, very good, haven't they? They've been excellent.
They're playing very well at the moment, but I think the Bulldogs would be pretty stiff opposition, actually.
And Barry, in that grand final, you kicked 4 behinds. You're playing as a forward flank, forward pocket. In those days, you wouldn't venture too far from that section of the ground, would you?
Well, you weren't allowed, really. You got into trouble if you certainly got found out if you were wandering over the other side of the ground. But, yes, I was a bit off the target that day, but never mind. We won by 4 points.
That's all you got to do, Barry. That's all you got to do. Did you kick drop kicks in those days?
Yes, we did kick drop kicks.
Did any of them go where they were supposed to?
Well, as a matter of fact, the last kick I had of that game, I got a ball off the pack, and I was right near the end of the game, and I kicked it out of bounds on purpose. But I kicked a drop kick, and it must have gone 60 yards way up in the Ponsford stand. And had I had a shot, it might have gone through the goals. But
so it was an accident, was it?
Pardon?
It was a real accident, was it?
It was a fluke. Yeah.
So you could kick on both sides of your body, couldn't you, Barry? Could you kick a drop kick on both sides?
Well, I could kick left foot in those days. Yes, I could.
Yeah.
Not enormously well, but I could do it. And,
well enough.
I got by with it anyway.
Barry, it's great to chat to you.
Fantastic.
And get your memories from that era, and specifically on the 1964 grand final. We've got the closing minutes of the match coming up for everyone to take a listen to. So enjoy your afternoon and all the very best.
Good on you, Roger. Thank you very much for ringing.
That's Barry Vagg with us on Vintage Grandstand, and you talk about players not being allowed to drift up the field or leave their position, Clinchy. Well, Neil Crompton was playing in the back pocket that day when he famously wandered forward and kicked what proved to be the winning goal, and you'll hear that in just a moment.
So he went against team rules?
Absolutely.
How do you do that?
I think it was the one time that Norm Smith was prepared to make an exception. Noel Bailey and Ken Dakin are the ABC Sport commentators here, the 1964 grand final.
Here the Rucks go for it, with Wise getting a tap of beauty, but it's sharked nicely by Ronnie Reeves. Reeves boots the ball forward. It goes straight to Emsel. He couldn't hold the ball. In come Collingwood. Pick it up. Get it across the waters. And away go the Magpies into attack again. In chips Crompton. He overruns the ball. Makes one of the few mistakes. There Collingwood through Tuddenham picking up the ball. Putting it down to Gablick. Gablick is running into an open goal. There's no one within Cooey. A straight kick and he'll put it through. And Collingwood... Well, what a fantastic change has come over this game. Collingwood have hit the front after 18 minutes of play in the final quarter. That was absolutely fantastic. There was Gablick left all on his own in the attacking zone, about the only player there. And there was the big fellow streaking downfield about 100 yards, bouncing the ball, running into the goal square and popping it through. And Collingwood are 8-12-60, Melbourne 7-15-57.
The ball back in the centre. There's the hit out going Melbourne's way. Coming up towards the half-forward line. Kicked off the ground. Collingwood are swarming everywhere. Can't get their boot with this. Very, very crowded play. Another kick off the ground. Another kick off the ground from Jacobs. Down it goes. And Wright takes the mark for Collingwood in the centre half-back position. And Reeves comes out and tells him to hold on to it. And Wright's going back for a kick downfield. Collingwood suddenly revitalised following that those last couple of goals. There's Wright putting it wide out this time towards the centre wing position. Dixon setting himself for Melbourne, but it's Collingwood out there who bring down the mark on the centre wing position. Magpies marking well. Marking out there through Tuddenham on the centre wing. Melbourne 7-15-57. Trail Collingwood now by 3 points. Collingwood are 8-12-60. Tuddenham's kick coming wide out towards the half-forward flank position. Rowett comes up from behind for Melbourne. Got his hands onto the ball but couldn't quite hold it, and it goes out of play on Melbourne's half-back flank. Steer in the ruck for Collingwood. Wise is there for Melbourne. The ball is knocked away. Goes Collingwood's way. Picked up though by Adams. He has to kick hurriedly. Out it goes into the centre of the ground. Collingwood, Melbourne coming forward up towards the centre half forward position. Players throwing themselves into the fray now. But it's Collingwood coming out with great dash. The ball is picked up for them by Reeves. Has a long kick down towards the centre half forward position. Players fly. Picked up by Waters. Waters in trouble. Has to hand pass in a hurry. Is picked up by Tassie Johnson of Melbourne. And Johnson's kick slides right off the side of his boot. Going out towards the boundary line and out of play on Collingwood's half forward flank. And on their attacking side too. Melbourne 7-15-57. Collingwood 8-12-60. Emsel is on for Melbourne. Keneally is the player who went off. The ball to be thrown into play now on the half-forward flank. The Rucks go to it. Comes behind the pack. Picked up by Waters. A long hand pass out towards Urquhart. Urquhart fumbles the ball on the boundary line and it goes out of play. 3 points the difference. 57 points Melbourne, 60 points Collingwood.
And we've had about 19 and a half minutes of play in the final quarter. 19 and a half minutes gone. Collingwood 3 points in front. Well, what a remarkable effort on the part of Collingwood. Melbourne came into this game the confident side. Perhaps a little bit complacent, we don't know, but Collingwood really matched them in most departments. Now here Melbourne going forward, getting the ball up towards their half-forward line. Townsend gets hold of it, sends a hand pass to Burke. Burke is streaking downfield with the ball, drives it right up in front of goal. There's Hassaman setting himself for the mark and bringing it down. Man marking the ball for Melbourne, straight in front and about 15 yards out. Well, a straight kick here, and Melbourne will be in front of, again, changing fortunes in this final quarter. Mann, whose final kick against Hawthorn, put Melbourne in the 4. Lines it up, there's his shot, and he's missed it. He's hooked it straight round and through for a point only. And look at all the disappointed, or you can't see them, there are a lot of disappointed Melbourne supporters. Right round our broadcast position as Hassaman missed a comparatively easy shot to make the difference now 2 points. Melbourne 7-16-58, Collingwood 8-12-60. Here's McLean putting the ball into play, a nice drop kick too, a chance for Melbourne through Dixon to mark the ball. Was allowed to take it unopposed. Not good play there by Collingwood. Back goes Dixon, there's his kick. Bring the ball right up in front of goal. They fly for it. Barassi goes high, couldn't hold it. Crompton picks up the ball, slams it goal, and puts it through, and Melbourne hit the front. And it will amaze you when I tell you that Crompton came up from the back pocket, way up from the back pocket, to get hold of that ball and put it through for Melbourne. Well, what a remarkable thing. A fantastic piece of play by Neil Crompton, and Melbourne in front again by 5 points, 8-16 to 8-12. The crowd going wild with excitement.
And in the ruck this time, it's Melbourne with a chance to go forward again. Dixon chasing it. Chapman looking for a free kick. It's picked up by Tuddenham, and just as he's about to break away, umpire Brophy blows the whistle, and the free kick will go Chapman's way in the centre of the ground. Chapman wants to go on with it, but umpire Brophy whistles him back, and he's to take his kick. Melbourne hitting the front again, fighting back 8-16, 64 to 8-12, 60 Collingwood. The kick goes out towards the half-forward flank position from Chapman, and the mark is taken there by Turner. Turner comes in, left foot punt kick. Down it goes. It's a beauty too, right up into the forward zone. But there, in the teeth of goal, the mark is taken for Melbourne by Burke. Burke, who must be swung down to full back for Melbourne. And Burke, rising high, brings down the mark for the Demons.
Wasn't that an amazing goal of Crompton's, no?
Amazing, yes, Ken. He couldn't have seen daylight. Just fired away like Hassaman against Hawthorn. There's the kick out. It goes towards the half-back flank position for Melbourne, and umpire Brophy has blown the whistle, and the free kick is going Collingwood's way. This time to be taken by Kevin Rose. Rose out on the half-forward flank for Collingwood. A lot of players down there at the moment in the Collingwood forward zone. Rose comes in, gets his kick, awkward-looking kick, but covering distance, going up towards the half-forward line. They throw themselves into the air. There's a chance there for Melbourne to get hold of the ball, trying hard to battle their way out of the pack of players. Out it goes towards Dixon. Dixon picks the ball up for Melbourne, booting it out towards the centre wing position. Players rising for the mark, and I think it may be allowed Melbourne's way. Up on the centre wing to be taken by Vagg. Vagg coming right down from the half-forward flank to mark on the outer side of the ground on the centre wing, and time ticking away now. Can't be very long to go.
We're in the time-on period now.
The ball is kicked by Vagg, going up towards the half-forward flank. Collingwood are able to chip in and mark the ball, kick it into the centre of the ground. The mark is taken in the centre for Collingwood by Gablick. Gablick wastes no time, has a long kick. Out it goes towards the half-forward flank position. Melbourne have got 2 or 3 players there. They back each other up. There, Wise has got the ball, knocks it across towards Crompton. Crompton kicks it out wide towards Dixon, and Dixon marks the ball for Melbourne on the half-back flank. Melbourne 8-16, 64. Collingwood 8-12, 60.
And this game still wide open. Melbourne clinging to a 4-point advantage. Well, what a thriller. The final game of the year. And there's the kick by Dixon, puts it close to the boundary line, where Brassey cleverly knocks it over to from a time-wasting point of view. Waiting for the ball to come in now. There's a buzz of excitement right round the ground. 102,000 people here to see this grand final. Gablick gets the ball as it comes in, gets a hand pass to Rose, Rose to Chapman. Chapman has the ball knocked away. It comes towards the centre where Turner gets hold of it. Down it goes to Duncan Wright. He's caught, gets in a hand pass. Melbourne come in through Anderson. He's brushed aside. It's kicked off the ground by Wright. Comes out where it's picked up here again by Chapman. He's brushed aside though by Dixon. Grand play by the Melbourne winger. And Melbourne are backed up there by Burke. He's caught with the ball, drops it, play goes on. Graham comes in. He's battling with about 3 or 4 Melbourne players. The whistle has gone in the interim, and it's a free kick to Graham. Well now, isn't this an interesting situation with Graham about 25 to 30 yards out, the angle 45 degrees, and a straight kick here, and the Woodsman will hit the front again. There's his shot at goal. We'll wait on it. It's gone right across the goal. They set themselves to the mark. It's nearly held by Massey. Couldn't quite hold it though. Onto the ground it comes, and a Collingwood player who's grabbed the ball is met solidly, Urquhart it was, and taken over the line where the ball will be thrown in. Not long to go, about a minute and a half to go. The ball into play, a chance for Williams to clear it away from Melbourne. He does so, comes through with plenty of dash, puts his boot to the ball. It's gone close to the boundary line, over, and will be thrown in midfield on the grandstand side. Melbourne 4 points in front, 8-16 to Collingwood, 8-12.
And the ball thrown into play on the half-forward flank for Collingwood. Out it comes towards Turner. Turner comes in on the left foot. He's trying to play the field. He's in trouble. Comes in, he's still got the ball. Drops it. Play goes on. But picked up by Urquhart. Urquhart a hand pass in the direction of Tuddenham. It goes past that player. Melbourne come out, kick it off the ground. Out it comes towards Hill. The ball bounces past Hill, though. Comes into the open spaces again. Hill's trying to pick it up. He's got hold of the ball. He's in trouble, though, Hill. Picks it up now. Gets on the left foot and bangs it out of bounds. Off balance, Hill got his left foot of it and put it out of play.
28 minutes of play gone in the final quarter.
Well, not very much time now, Ken. Usually allow for about 29, 30 minutes a quarter. The ball to be thrown into play up on the half-forward flank position. Gablick in the ruck that time. Interfered with. The play goes on. Was picked up by Emsell. He knocks it across. Was picked up by a Melbourne player there who put his boot to it, Townsend, and put the ball out of play between the centre wing and Collingwood's half-forward flank. Melbourne 8-10, 8-16, 64, leading Collingwood 8-12, 60. The ball into the air again. Ruckman going to it. Gablick goes up, gets the knock in the direction of Kevin Rose. Picked up by Mann. Mann's in trouble though. Can't break clear of the pack. It's kicked off the ground. Here's a chance for Collingwood with Wright. Wright fumbled the ball though. Collingwood Melbourne pick it up. Kick it across towards the half-forward flank position. Adams is racing to it. Can't get to the ball before it goes across the line and out of play. Melbourne 8-16-64. Collingwood 8-12-60.
About a minute remaining for play. Here's the ball coming in. The Rucks go for it with Collingwood getting the tap. Jacobs picks the ball up as tackled. Play goes on. Duncan Wright comes in. He's brushed aside. They're coming in hard. Players giving everything they've got. Here's a chance for Townsend. Kicks the ball off the ground. It's gone to Vagg. Vagg's going to shoot for goal. No, he slams it straight out of play. Perhaps a good move by Barry Vagg too, knowing that only a few seconds remain for play, with Melbourne 8-16-64 to Collingwood 8-12-60. Well, what a magnificent effort this is by Collingwood after 2 hard games coming out in this grand final, and at the moment only 4 points down against Melbourne. Not long to go now. Crowd, not a soul left this ground. 102,000 people. There's the ball into play. Lord gets hold of it. The ball's knocked away. Picked up by Hill. He drives it forward. Plenty of Melbourne players there. And Crumpton comes in and takes a magnificent mark. Well, he kicked the goal that put Melbourne in front. And there he is, showing perfect judgment, marking the ball again. There's his kick, bringing the ball out towards Hassaman. It's knocked away from him, though, and out of play to be thrown in between Melbourne's right half-forward flank and their full forward line. The crowd roaring all the time. About half a minute to go. Ball into play, and Lord gets the tap, but he interferes with Gabalik, and the big fellow will take the free kick. Gabalik to take the free for Collingwood, goes back, takes his time. There's his kick towards the centre of the ground. All the Melbourne defenders have come up, knocked the ball away. In comes Reeves, he's caught with the ball, held onto him. Umpire Brophy calls for it and will bounce it. The defence is right on top at the moment. A magnificent effort by 36 players.
Ball is bounced just over the centre towards Melbourne's half-forward line. Knocked away in the pack, gives the chance for Collingwood to get hold of the ball through Reeves. Out it goes. Melbourne defenders come out, misjudge the run of the ball. It's hand pass, goes out towards Dalton. Dalton tries to get hold of the ball again. He's got it on the half-forward flank, being hotly pressed. Still got Dalton. Runs in. His kick is kicked out towards Graham. Graham's got the ball at centre half-forward. He's met by 3 Melbourne players. Down he goes with players all over him. And umpire Brophy's calling for the ball, and he's going to bounce it. This is about 25 yards out. And there's the siren. Melbourne premiers for 1964, defeating Collingwood by 4 points.
This is Vintage Grandstand.
Wonderful to listen to highlights there, or live commentary, not live, but from the day it was live, of the 1964 grand final between Melbourne and Collingwood. Melbourne winning its 12th premiership, 6 flags in the space of a period from 1955 to 64. They were the dominant team of the era, but then began the drought for the Demons and the curse of Norm Smith, who was sacked the following year. The final score, Melbourne 8-16-64, Collingwood 8-12-60, and the final stages of that match were very tense, and so good to hear them from the ABC archives. Peter in Ventnor has sent us a text. This is in reference to Uncle Norm, as my old maths teacher Ken Empsall would call him. Norm Smith's players who later coached: Barrass, Brian Dixon, Ian Ridley, John Beckwith, Noel McMahon at South Melbourne, Ian Thorogood at Carlton, Hassaman, South Fremantle and Caulfield, Neil Crompton at Oakley, Frank Davis, assistant to Ditterich and coached 1 game at Melbourne, Tassie Johnson at Box Hill, Laurie Mithen at Port Melbourne, Bob Johnson at East Fremantle and Camberwell, Peter Brenchley at Camberwell, says Peter. So it's a thorough list there, Pete, and thanks for sending it through. 0437 774 774. One of those names mentioned there is Hassaman. He's a member of the Australian Football Hall of Fame and the Melbourne Team of the Century, and a very good player for Melbourne on that day. Hassa, thank you for your time today. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Although I must admit I had a bit of a knot in the stomach listening to that last couple of minutes.
It still made you nervous, did it?
Oh, absolutely.
What are your memories of that game? What sticks out most in your mind? Obviously, there's Crompton's goal late in the piece, but are there other moments within the game that still sit very firmly in your memory bank?
My memory of the 64 grand final basically goes back to the second semi-final where we beat Collingwood very convincingly by, 89 points. So going into the grand final, we were obviously raging favourites, and I think everyone expected Melbourne to win the game, but like many grand finals, the game was not won until the played on the day. And full credit to Collingwood, they came out and really took it up to us and made us work very, very hard for it. I guess the memory I also have is that probably we should have won it in that I think we kicked 1 goal 6 in the last quarter. And that certainly didn't help things.
Hasser, it was such a great period for Melbourne. You arrived at the club and won a premiership in your first 2 years. The first one was against the Bombers, who you grew up barracking for, but it was the end of an era for Melbourne in terms of premierships. I guess the references in terms of some of the writing at the time says that it wasn't a team full of stars. It was more the galvanization of the group under Norm Smith. Is that sort of your memories of that playing group from 1964?
Yeah, well, sort of, in that we did have a lot of experience in 1964, which was the end of probably the careers of a number of players. I mean, going into 1964, Barassi and Adams were playing in their 6th grand final. I think Dixon and Donnie Williams had played were playing for their 4th or 5th. Johnny Lord 4, Tassie Johnson and I were playing in our 3rd. So, although we had a number of young players in Graham Jacobs and Berkey and Frankie Davis had only played a handful of games, 64 we were a pretty experienced team overall. So I guess, we had every reason to be confident.
Hasser, Neil Crompton won the game for you, and with a kick after, well, not after the siren, just at the end of the game. We were talking to Barry Vagg before. You're supposed to pay your position. He's a back pocket. Now, he must have disobeyed rules.
Well, yes and no. I mean, he did follow, I think it was Mickey Bone Mickey Bone came up to go onto the ball, and that stage of the game, it was getting very tight, and Cromo, doing the right thing, followed him up. Thank God for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
How often do you get together these days, Hasser, with the surviving players from that premiership?
Well, we've had a Barassi lunch going since the year 2001. Ron back then gave me a call and said, listen, we haven't spoken or been together for some time. Let's try and get some of the boys together. So in 2001, we had a lunch down at the Bentley Club, and that then was the start of every last Tuesday in the month for 10 months of the year. We've got together and had the Barassi lunch. Of course, over the last couple of years, we've lost a couple of players, or a number of players, and with COVID over the last 18 months, we haven't been together, that often. Haven't been allowed to get together.
Yeah, it's obviously very tough for everyone at the moment, isn't it? But makes those catch-ups very difficult, and as cherished as they would be, I can imagine what that means to everyone. Speaking of Ron Barassi, Hasser, can you speak about, obviously you had Norm Smith, who was a huge figure, and obviously a huge mentor in the life of Ron Barassi. What about Ron himself? How large a figure was he at Melbourne during that time? And you ultimately replaced him the following year as captain.
Well, I think probably most people that can recall, Melbourne was Norm Smith and Melbourne was Ron Barassi. Barassi was a great inspirational leader. Played at his very best when the chips were down. Perhaps wasn't overly endowed in skill, but certainly what he lacked in skill he made up with endeavour. And the number of times that it was Barassi that got Melbourne out of trouble were very numerous. I think that my first year, in 59, my first premiership, was Barassi that got us going against Essendon, and we won that one. I think he will tell you honestly that his first half in 64 was one that he would want to forget, but then in true Barassi style, played a very serviceable second half.
We heard that in the commentary, actually. Ken Dakin made mention that it wasn't really Barassi's day. How significant was the tumult caused by his departure at the time, and then you had to go in and captain the team to try and get things back on level playing fields again, Hasser?
Well, at the end of 1964, obviously we were all slating on air after the premiership, and then out of the blue, in I think it was November, out came the news that Barassi was defecting to Carlton. That was just that's just hit the players like a rock. I mean, who could imagine that Ron Barassi was to leave Melbourne and coach against the club? It was news to the players, and as I say, unbelievable that such a thing would happen. Then, of course, 1965 came, and we started the season off in great form. Like, we won the first 8 matches. I think we won 9 of the first 12. And then out of the blue, again, on Friday evening, Norm got that fateful telegram telling him that he was sacked immediately. So Barassi's defection was a bombshell. You know, the Norm Smith sacking was a nuclear event.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And were you the first person that Norm Smith called when he found the news?
I was actually talking to Norm when the telegram arrived. Norm would ring me on the Friday night around 8:30 and sort of discuss what he thought, how we would go about playing the game the next day. And in the middle of our discussions, I could hear the front doorbell ring through the phone. And so Norm ended the conversation there and then.
Goodness me.
And then 2 minutes later, the phone rang again, and he was this distraught voice.
It's a massive part of Melbourne's history. It absolutely is, Hasser. Unfortunately, news is approaching. We really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much and enjoy the grand final.